Yeah, it's interesting on the note of the race to the bottom. You're telling a designer who made $1 million last year that he's racing to the bottom.
Right.
I don't quite understand the irony of that claim.
Irony
Um,
for sure. Like, I don't get that at all. This is the part that I don't square
yeah,
with your critics. Sometimes I'll spend some time in your comment section, and it's like, why are you not asking how he's doing it? Why are you so critical of the fact that he's showing these numbers and making this money? Like, what is really at the heart of this? And it's got to be,
yeah.
I don't know. Tell me what you think it is. Welcome to the Creative Brief. I hang out with your favorite creatives, entrepreneurs, and influencers. Today I sit down with Brett Williams, the godfather of design subscriptions, to talk about the massive success of his company, Designjoy. Brett has figured out a way to turn his one-man design agency into a productized service that grosses over $120,000 per month. If you're doing the math, that sets him up to make about $1.5 million every year as a solopreneur. Now, even though I'm a fan of Brett, I went into this interview with a healthy level of skepticism. I mean, Designjoy seems too good to be true, right? And it's fair to say that people have pretty strong opinions about Brett and Designjoy and his approach to viral marketing. But regardless of all that, I'm curious to know what you think after hearing him out. I'm Brian Athey, and this is the Creative Brief. Brett Williams, what's up, man? Welcome to the Creative Brief. So glad to have you. What's going on with you?
Honored to be here, man. No, I'm just excited. I haven't done a podcast in a while, so yeah, I've seen you. I've seen your stuff around Twitter. So when you reached out, I was super stoked. So yeah, I think this is the first time meeting, right?
That's
So,
right. Well, I've been
yeah.
I've been following you for quite a while. I think that you're kind of changing the design game before a lot of our eyes, and it's super interesting to watch. I've dabbled with the idea of this amazing service that you've created in this design subscription just from kind of watching your journey, and so I've been an observer of what you do. But yeah, this is the first time we've gotten to meet. So really, pleasure's all mine. I'm glad that you're here.
Yeah, same, man. Thanks for having me.
I taught you a bit before, and I think that I don't want to do the whole like Spider-Man origin story every single time, but I think it will help to give some context. Tell me just a little bit about your career, kind of how you started out before Designjoy. Like, what got you to the point of just deciding I'm going to flip this whole thing on its head?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I actually didn't start in design. I started in actually social media, but I was sort of a what you call a page flipper. A company would buy social media pages with a big following, and I'd kind of flip them and we'd sell them off. But in the process of that, we needed content, and so I hacked together Photoshop skills and started generating graphics for all these social media platform pages and stuff like that. And that process is sort of where I fell in love with design, and then my whole design career from there was pretty typical.
Self-taught though?
Working for
I mean, you
self-taught. Yeah. So I went to school for business, international business. I had no clue what I was going to do with it,
Wow.
but dropped out going into my senior year. Got a job offer in California. I was in Missouri at the time, and then took that social media role, which transitioned into a designer role within the same organization.
Really? Okay.
And then from there, started as a graphic designer, transitioned into web, and that's where I sort of stuck. So hopped around. I was never at one place for more than a couple of years.
That's pretty typical. That's how it goes.
Transitioned out for a multitude of reasons. Hopped around a few agencies, a few large corporations. Usually as like a sole designer within an organization, which again seems pretty typical nowadays.
You're taking incoming fire from everybody in the organization, right?
Yeah, exactly. So through all of that, I started what I do now, Designjoy, about almost 7 years ago in July, and it was sort of out of necessity. because the company was going under and I needed a backup plan. And so I thought, what better time than to sort of create something on the side. And so, yeah, Designjoy was sort of a backup plan for
Like a
that. I was
safety
laid
net. You
off.
just decided like side
Mhm.
project. I'll set up this. Was it
Exactly.
you were just thinking you'd set up your own kind of freelance agency? Kind of was that the initial idea?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was glorified freelancing. I mean, I had the choice of going to find another job or setting some sort of freelance structure up on the side to kind of fall back on. Plus, who doesn't like a little bit of extra income every
Sure.
month? And so, while I still had a job and had a salary, I kind of used that as an opportunity to do that. And that's sort of where Designjoy was born, out of basically just like a side project that quickly turned into a full-time job like it is today.
So
So,
did you've mentioned before, and I appreciate how transparent you are with some of your pricing and stuff like that, but you started like kind of lowballing yourself, right? Like you built this thing
mhm.
really quickly. You got a lot of traction on Product Hunt, right? Wasn't that kind of the how it all came together?
Yeah, yeah. So when I came into the agency sphere, if you want to call it an agency, so it's kind of a play on agency. But yeah, when I came into this industry, there was only one person doing it, and it was called Design Pickle,
Yeah,
and
right.
they were heavily leaning towards graphic design, whereas I was in web design, and kind of saw that as an opportunity to sort of take the subscription model and apply it to things beyond flyers and posters and social media stuff, and apply it to what I thought I was decent at. And so I had no one to really refer to in terms of like what I should price this thing at, since no one else was really doing it. The only reference that I had was Design Pickle, even though they were in another industry, they were charging, I think it was like $400 a month, and so I just did the exact same thing.
Okay.
And that's
400
where I
was
started. It was
the initial subscription?
$450 a month.
450. Okay.
Yeah, that was the starting point for Hue at the time. It's called Hue, and then it transitioned into Designjoy. But yeah, that was the starting point. So yeah, I mean, definitely underselling. Underselling
So
myself.
you're kind of building the safety net, and you think I could come up with the typical landing page that's got about me and the services and the approach, and I could develop my contract and I could go seek out clients. What was the moment that you just thought, was it because of Design Pickle? You just thought, I'm not going to label this as a retainer or as a project based thing. Like, I'm going to go the
Yeah.
subscription route. Why that? Because nobody else really seems to think of that, or at least not at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't look at it as being a super viable option for me. I felt like the chance of succeeding was relatively low, and I think the reason for that is because there's just so much competition. When you are a traditional agency or you're just another freelancer, right? I mean, you're competing with thousands, in some cases, tens of thousands or hundreds of
Right.
thousands of other people. And so I thought, well, there's one singular company doing this on planet Earth that I know of.
Mhm.
I could be number two, and I could be number one in the industry of which I love. And so yeah, it was sort of a no brainer. I personally like the subscription model. I mean, obviously, from a benefits perspective, in terms of the benefits that I reap from it, is obvious. Number one being recurring revenue.
Right.
Other mediums of design other than salary, you're sort of having to reinvent the wheel every month, get new work. Work kind of comes and goes, but rarely ever recurs. And so yeah, for obvious reasons, I fell in love with the subscription model and thought at the same time it was super attractive for clients as well.
So did you?
And so yeah, it was just sort of like first to market, second to market, where no matter whichever way you want to look at it, good opportunity to kind of jump in
And
early.
you're already a designer and a developer, or Webflow developer, at least as far as I know, right? So
Yeah, for
so it
sure.
was
Yeah.
like, I'll just give this a shot. Like, you just stood it up like over the course of a day, put it on Product Hunt.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
did
Yeah. There was, go ahead.
yeah,
Go
where
ahead.
did the traction come from though? Because like you said that you had sort of been like on Product Hunt as a active member, but sounds like this thing
Hmm.
kind of got big pretty quick.
It did. Yeah. Most people coming into the the product hunt launch have some sort of plan in place, right? They usually have like a Twitter following or something, and so when they go live, they have this sort of momentum that sort of pushes them up the list, right? And you get exposure that way. I didn't have that. I did not have an audience. I had basic friends and family on my personal Facebook page.
Yeah.
And so I'm from a small town,
Right.
but like they all banded together, and people that I went to high school with, and their moms and dads, and everyone sort of just banded together and upvoted it to a certain point where it kind of just took care of itself.
Wow.
You need that initial momentum, but like I said, at a certain point, it's just like growing an audience. At a certain point, it just
Critical mass
naturally happens, right? And so I got over that hump with just friends and family, and then things kind of took care of itself. But yeah, it was pretty much an instant success, I guess you could say. Nowhere near what it is today. I mean, looking back, it was such small numbers that I was working with, but it, in terms of going to market, was pretty instantaneous within minutes of actually going live.
So did you have people sign up that day?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, that night it went live at midnight, and the traction was pretty much mind blowing right away. A lot of inquiries. I mean, a lot of people, saying, "What the heck is this? How does it work?" They had obviously never seen it before, and so most of my effort was spent, chatting with prospects and answering questions and that sort of thing, compared to the signups. But there was several signups that happened within that first day, and then just kind of continued on for, maybe 2 or 3 years after that. So,
and did you leave your job immediately, or did you stay? Did that job that you were worried about kind of transitioning out of or losing, did it go away? Did you stay at it?
No, I actually, I kept that job. I got fired. I got a new job,
Okay.
all within the period of running Designjoy. So actually I had two back-to-back full-time jobs. And then I kept my job for about, probably around 3 years of running Designjoy until I felt comfortable.
Yeah. Was it were you like, I just need to double my income, and if I can double it, then I'll drop my full-time job. I'll do this full time. Or was it like, did you have a number in mind? Like again, critical mass?
No, man, no, I had no number 9. I was looking for that gut feeling of like, now's the time, right? No, man, I was making significantly more at Designjoy than I was working my job, but my job was super easy. I mean, you can imagine, I mean, at times I've managed 40 or 50 Designjoy clients. So, a full-time job for one company is nothing for me.
Yeah.
And it really didn't take much of my time. So it was that security that allowed me to sort of do whatever I wanted to do with Designjoy, try whatever I wanted to try. I had zero risk if it failed. So it just left me a lot of breathing room to play around, and didn't have that sort of dire need to make it work.
Yeah. I feel like this is the point where like people start thinking critically, and like they just can't wrap their head around the volume. Because you tell me, like, okay, so you started at 450, your packages now, and for anybody listening that's not familiar with Brett, like, one of the interesting things about him is that he shares a lot of this information. So I'm not necessarily probing at prices without at least kind of having some background on what it is. But you do around 20 clients a month now, like kind of at stasis, right?
Yeah, a little north of that. I mean, it fluctuates,
Yeah.
but yeah, right now, like kind of sweet spots, like 25, sub 30 is sort of where I like to be.
And
now.
let me see if I can recount the model. So the model is that someone can come to you, kind of instantly sign up, get access to a Trello board. Your price point is at what now? What's your entry level?
2 price points. Okay. Yeah, entry level is $5K.
$5K entry level, and then there's a $7,500 package, which is more than one request at a time, right?
Yeah, it's technically 8K, but yeah, it's basically the only difference is double the output.
I needed to double check the site. I went through the new site for I went through the new site for
You're
the
close.
aesthetic. I wanted to check it out, but I should have double checked the prices before we got on. But
yeah, no worries.
But to do the math, that puts you north of $1 million a year, and I think that a lot of the criticism you seem to receive might just be from people that are like, shit, I want to make $1 million a year. And there's no way that I can see doing that in my $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year design job. So this guy must be bullshit. Sure. I can't believe what he's saying. But the model that you've introduced is somebody can sign up, get access to a Trello board, put all the unlimited requests, all the requests that they want on the to be done queue. They can
Sure.
move it into their first priority queue, the do this now queue. You will do it in 24, 48 hours. This could be anything from a brand kit to a landing page to whatever they request. They're going to see something within 48 hours. And if they love it, they move it to done. They move their next request in. Essentially, say I don't know what a good medium price is. That's the weird thing about this industry. But let's say like a medium price for a landing page is say like $2K, right? Let's say somebody's going to pay $2K for a landing page. That means that if a client does it right, they could get around, if you're working 5 days a week, like 10 landing pages out of you in a month. They could, if they wanted to, which gets it like a $20,000 value for them. And if they really wanted to take advantage of you, the way that a lot of the way that clients historically do, it seems like you would be designing dozens and dozens and dozens of landing pages every day. What is the reality of the business though? What have you figured out that like people don't necessarily understand when they try and like dissect this model?
Yeah. I think that's the biggest mistake that the skeptics make, is thinking that everything, we operate in this like uniform universe where if you have 20 clients, that means you have 20 active requests every day, and that, you know, that's just the way it works. The reality of the situation is nothing like that. There are certainly days that are busier than others, but traditional days look like, you know, maybe let's have an even number of 30 clients. Maybe possibly 7, 8 of those have new requests ready for you to be worked on. In that case, you have, you know, roughly 48 hours to do those requests in. Many of those requests take under 30 minutes to do, so plenty of time to get them all done. You may have, outside of those 7 to 8, you might have 7 to 8 more that are sort of in this like revision cycle phase. Revisions typically are very minor, 5-15 minutes a piece, if that, because I like to get it, you know, hopefully 90% there in the first draft, and then we're just sort of tightening things up. And then the other, you know, leftovers are, you know, don't have a request, or perhaps you're just waiting on feedback from them and it's sitting there. And so, yeah, the reality would be super hard for a designer to just be thrown into without having prior experience managing that much work. But for someone who's been doing it for as many years as I've been doing it, it's very easy.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, there's no stress whatsoever on my back to run Designjoy at this point.
Well, let me play devil's advocate for what a lot of your critics will say. Well, that's just not how it works, Brett. How it actually works is that you need a long discovery phase, and you need to be able to ask the clients and the stakeholders questions, and you need to be able to survey them to know what they really want. And you need to be able to spend a long time. You're devaluing the design process if you don't take a week on your wireframes, and you're racing to the bottom if you try and show them something without you know, testing it and refining it and showing a bunch of versions. Like, I feel like, one, a lot of your critics must not hire designers, but as someone who actively hires designers, I see your work and I think that it's as good as anything out there. Now, I don't see a ton of it. I see a lot on your Figma page. I see a lot of sort of the stuff you post on Twitter, but it's a very high quality product that you're delivering from what I can see. It's hard to find a designer that's that good, but one that can kind of throw the process aside and say, like, let me just give it my best shot. That seems to be not only a big differentiator, but like super attractive to a lot of clients, right?
Yeah. It's interesting on the note of the race to the bottom. You're telling a designer who made, you know, $1 million last year that he's racing to the bottom.
Right.
I don't quite understand the irony of that claim.
Irony for sure. Like, I don't get that at all. This is the part that I don't square with your critics. Sometimes I'll spend some time in your comment section and it's like, why are you not asking how he's doing it? Why are you so critical of the fact that he's showing these numbers and making this money? Like, what is really at the heart of this? And it's gotta be, I don't know. Tell me what you think it is.
Yeah. what I think the critics, where I think the critics are coming from. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Well, I mean, people are very opinionated about
Yeah.
what you do. It's either like
Yeah.
folks
Well, I
that
mean,
want to
so
replicate it or folks that want to tear it down and dismiss it.
yeah. Several points on this. The first being, people don't like when you talk about money.
Yeah.
Despite our common interest in making as much of it as we possibly can, right? If I were to ask you like what your goals are in life, you may say, freedom, time with my family, doing what I love, doing more of my hobbies. What gets you there is more money, right? Whether you whether you admit it or not, that is the tool that gets you to those places in
No
life.
question.
It's not money that's inherently good. It's a tool to get you there.
Right.
And so I find it sort of weird that we don't talk about money more, since that's, we're designers to not only because we love our work, but to use that in order to supply our families with goods and healthcare and all this sort of stuff. So it's
to be a provider.
It's super interesting to me. Yeah, it's super interesting to me that we don't talk about, I think also I have going against me this this sort of world online where you have a lot of these sort of what you call course boys, where they're selling a course on something they've never done before. And I think anytime someone comes out with a course, you're automatically deemed, illegitimate or a fraud or a scam.
Is that where you first started seeing the pushback?
That's where it accelerated for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like, of course, this guy's going to come out with a course. I mean, I waited 6 years running Designjoy before I came out with a course. And so if I wanted to do that, I would have done it a long time ago. But yeah, I think that's part of it. I think part of it too, and perhaps when it comes to other designers and their criticism of me, is the fact that I don't take design as seriously as them. Like, I don't take my job quite as seriously as they do.
Right.
I think I have benefited from not going to school for this craft.
Mm-hmm.
I have benefited from working at agencies that I could observe what they did wrong, what they did right, how clients were better served, or maybe in some cases less served certain ways. And I came out of it with some very contrarian ways of running an agency, some very polarizing ways, very different than what you see, even different than Design Pickled. I had no model for Designjoy and how I structured the fact that I don't have meetings and all this sort of things that sort of have made Designjoy sort of famous. All of it was contrary. And so since I've expelled process from the equation and expelled even sort of like as granular as design systems and this and that, I think a lot of people take issue with that and think that there's no way you can possibly arrive at a finished product without going through these 7, 8, 9, 10 steps.
So it's an affront. It's kind of an affront to them. Like, you're challenging kind of how they view and believe the industry and how serious they are about it. Mm-hmm. And they see someone who is able to take advantage of their skills and this momentum that they've built, and they think, well, there's just got to be something wrong with it. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. So I, because I really have no design process when it comes to when I intake a request in. I just do the request. Like, I just execute it. Like, I pop open Figma, start a blank canvas, and finish it. Right, that's what I do. There's no process. There's no communication between me and the client. There aren't discovery calls, or there's nothing. Right, I get the request, I get it done. And so yeah, that's obviously quite different. And I a lot of that I can do just based on my experience. So I operate what I call oftentimes assumption-based design, where certainly, like, I have 30 clients right now. Of course, some of them are going to be very, very detailed in their briefs. They're going to know exactly what they want, and others can have no clue what they want, and nor do they know really how to communicate it.
Right. Yeah.
And so, great if they know how to communicate it, awesome. But for those that don't, instead of like this going back and forth and hopping on a call and that sort of thing, I find it far easier and quicker to just mock up something quickly in Figma, send it back over to them. And it just makes that conversation so much richer. And you realize that, like, you're there 90% there anyways. And now it's just a matter of wrapping it up.
Yeah.
I make a lot of assumptions, and it works.
I'm so interested sometimes to ask designers that are sort of fundamentalists about their process, how often they go through all the meetings and they go through all the talk and they go through all the planning and all the research and development, and then they present something that still falls flat. Like, it is my experience, at least, that the rubber hits the road when you show them something. That's when the real conversation starts, and they can react instinctively. They can look at it through the eyes of their audience or whatever market they're trying to break into, and they can suddenly like they can articulate what they want so much more. Like where do your is it just instinctive? You said it's assumption based, but like say you hear from a client and you don't know anything about their industry or you don't really get enough from their brief, like how do you jump into it?
Um, part of it, part of it is I think my unique experience. You know, I've run Designjoy alone for, like I said, going on 7 years. Worked on multiple hundreds of products in almost every industry you can imagine. And so I know what generally works across the board, right? There, when you, let's say you design, you know, a product for something and you're designing the dashboard, right? Like you compare a dashboard for one industry to another, there are sort of overlapping concepts and UX patterns and UI patterns that can apply sort of universally, right? And so the more you do that, the more you recognize those patterns. You don't have to really dig into your subconscious to find them. They're just sort of at the forefront when you get into Figma. And so yeah, it's a lot of it too is like, you know, I tell clients, if you're not comfortable with this, put it out there for your customers and see, and then come back to me, right? Like
Yeah.
do proper testing, talk to users. I'm not going to do that on your behalf, but certainly if you don't, you know, I feel like, again, I think it's just a matter of overcomplicating the design
Yeah.
process and overthinking it. And it's like, if I were to show, you know, I've become sort of famous for the 30-minute rebrand too, which is funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like,
That sent a lot of
yeah,
people
if I were to show you a visual rebrand of a company that took me 30 minutes and then show you another one that took 3 months and cost 10x, you probably wouldn't be able to tell me which one was which, right?
Right.
And so it's just, yeah, I think the end product is ultimately almost always the same, but the way that we get there, the time that it takes, the money that it costs is quite different. And so I let clients decide what they want to do.
Well, when you were first sort of like when you opened up the fire hose and all this started coming in and you scaled up, I'm sure you adjusted prices along the way. I think that that's part of the story is that like you just learned over time, like every couple of months or so, or maybe every year or so, like we're going to bump things up a bit. But there had to
Yeah.
be just from, you know, doing freelance on my own, there had to be some tough years of like, you know, a lot of coffee, no sleep, no seeing your family, that kind of stuff. I mean, what was the
Yeah.
what were what was the downside of this?
Yeah, man. Well, I'm not a coffee drinker.
Okay.
I wish I was. That would have been hugely helpful during that period of time. But yeah, there is definitely, I would say, this the sum of my history building Designjoy would be characterized as pretty negative in terms of the position that I was in, the position that I put my family in, and just kind of overall mental health was not good.
Mhm.
And I don't, you know, I don't encourage others to follow directly in my footsteps and do exactly what I've done and scale it, you know, to the size that Designjoy is at, and to be, you know, a solopreneur in that. Like, I don't really sort of sell that dream because I know what it took to get here,
Mhm.
and it was super rough, right? It was like you can make all the money in the world, but if you don't have a life and you don't have time to enjoy it, it really doesn't mean as much as you thought it might, when you were just this sort of lowly graphic
That's
designer,
right.
making, you know, 60, 70,000 a year. You think that, you know, making $1 million a year is like, that's the end game, right? And it doesn't matter what it takes to get there, but it does, especially when you have a family.
For sure.
But
You've got kids, is
I'm
that right?
fortunate to be on that other side of that. Yeah, I have three kids.
Yeah.
I have a 1 year old, a now 4 year old, and 6 year old. So yeah, my wife is incredible and has been hugely supportive of not only running the house but supporting me through it all. And that's, you know, that's part of my success story as well, a huge part of it. But now I'm reaping the benefits of that, and so I've become better at my craft, faster at it. I've gotten just better systems down to where I can do the exact same work as I was back then, but work, you know, a fourth of the time. And it was only through going through that I was able to come out on the other side, able to do what I can do
Do you
now.
think some of it is just around like do you think some of the pushback like I watch a lot of Chris Doe's stuff and he always talks about value-based pricing. And
Mm-hmm.
if you are like if you're pricing your work on time, then you're essentially like, it will do better for you to take a longer amount of time on the project, but it's not necessarily in the best interest of the client for you to take a long time. The faster you go, the more value you can provide. And I would also say, like, a structured retainer is usually such that you've got a scope and you've got parameters that you're either as an agency or as an individual trying to stay within, while the client is just trying to get things done. They don't care about those, the parameters of hours or resources or whatever. Like, they just want so you're constantly kind of adversarial with them. It seems like you figured out a way to get somebody to pay up front and just go nuts. I mean, do whatever you want and I'll get it done for you. And all of that just translates into a very different kind of value than a lot of designers or agencies are familiar with, I think.
The Designjoy client profile looks quite a bit different than most clients that, most designers are accustomed to. And so that's the same reason why, one client will make you hop on 13 discovery calls and jump through a bunch of hoops just to sign them on and give you, 50% upfront payment for the project. And then Designjoy clients will come across your side, drop $5,000, $8,000 without even speaking with you. They're two different profiles completely. And their expectations and the way that they want to go about receiving the design work that they're in need of is quite different. They're usually very hands off. They respect and trust you as a designer, which is what every designer ultimately wants. There's a lot of creative freedom. They don't have interest in nitpicking small things. They're just very sort of progress driven. And it's honestly, like, the position that I'm in now, I can't imagine a better situation for a designer. And that I don't say that lightly. I think it's a dream job.
It seems pretty ideal. And I think that probably is where some of the, negative pushback goes that you get. One of the questions I wanted to ask is that, okay, so you said that a lot of the negative feedback started around the time or at least it accelerated right around the time you put out the course, and this sort of course boy culture, as you talked about, drew some blowback. But what I heard you say is that you had experience, traditional agencies and design work. You had then done this design subscription model for a good 4, 5, 6 years before you put out a course. And during those 4 or 5 or 6 years, you had kids at home and you were trying to juggle at least the Designjoy job. For part of that, you were doing it with a full-time job, and the overload. I mean, for anybody who's ever worked freelance and has had a handful of demanding clients, even 2 or 3 that needed something at once, it's so overwhelming. So I can imagine that it is fair to say that for the majority of people that put out courses, you've got the what's the right word? You've got the experience and the bona fides to actually put out something that people will take. And so whether folks like it or not, you launched your course and it did big numbers. It's done big numbers, did big numbers last year, at least, right? Do you have a lot of subscribers for the course?
Yeah, actually, we're coming up on a year on the 15th of this month. That'll be sort of the anniversary. So I was looking up things this morning, kind of seeing where it's at. I mean, I follow it weekly, but yeah, I think the number was 7,300 and something odd students enrolled in it. So yeah, I mean, it's done phenomenal.
That's the steps to basically follow your model, like figure out how to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very I would call it elementary course. Mm-hmm. Designjoy is a very elementary business. There's not a whole lot to it. I think most people are interested in how I set up Trello and how I set up sort of systems, and down to, even how I do the website and Stripe and all that sort of stuff, how you accept subscriptions, how you pause subscriptions. So yeah, it's kind of an insight into the behind the scenes of Designjoy. It's not a design course. It's sort of industry agnostic. But yeah, it was just a kind of a Designjoy playbook, so to speak.
Is it true that you recorded a lot of it like voice note style? Did you say that one time?
Yeah. So what I did was I was extremely busy at Designjoy, obviously, and there was a lot of demand for some sort of organized, sort of course educational product on how I do it. I had done a ton of consultation calls one-on-one. They were great. They paid well, but they took a lot of my time. And it was just one-on-one. It wasn't like with cohorts or anything like that. And so I thought, well, I can either never do it, or I could do it in a fashion that would actually, result in something being released. And so it's sort of the approach that I took to Designjoy. It's the approach that I've taken to previous businesses and projects, was just to kind of put something bare bones out there. And a lot of it was recorded, in voice notes in my car, and later updated to video and sort of screen share for many of those later on, just out of demand. But that format was interesting. It was not perceived exactly well by, I would say, a large chunk of the audience. Others loved it because they could go to the gym and put it on and get through the course in 2 hours and be done with it. So it's just, you can't please everybody, but at least it was done. Right.
And you're also coming from like, you're not super active on a bunch of social channels. You're pretty much just on Twitter. And I think you started
anymore, no.
Kind of at bare bones. Like you had a small, or you just maybe started your account, right? Like what's this?
I technically created a Twitter in, I think it says 2021 or something, but didn't actually tweet until 2 years ago. 2 years ago? Yeah.
So
I think.
Is it the business background that the copywriting comes from? Like you're really solid on social media. Your website's got great copy on it. Like as a copywriter, as kind of like I'm not going to say a provocateur. I don't know if you're necessarily inviting a lot of criticism, but you do know how to get attention,
fair.
Right? Like it's very obvious that you know what you're doing.
I think,
where does that come from?
I think it's it's sort of the best of both worlds, because I am somewhat provocative, but I also only say things that I believe in and that to be true.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, well, if the byproduct of is that it's provocative, I guess that's a good thing. As long as I'm not disingenuous with my beliefs and my takes on certain things. I just matter of factly have a bunch of provocative sort of contrarian views on things. And obviously that stuff gets a lot of eyeballs and a lot of attention and a lot of responses, both negative and positive. Yeah. And being sort of in the limelight sort of early on in my career and in a different industry, I sort of grew accustomed with criticism and online hate and that sort of thing. Doesn't bother me at all.
No, it doesn't.
And so, no, not one bit. No. I used to have a much larger platform than what I do now back in the day. And so by about 10x. So it was,
what was that?
So it doesn't relate to this conversation really at all. But I used to run the biggest blog on Tumblr, actually.
No way. Which
is a platform that is now sort of dying, a slow death. And so, yeah, it 7-figure following, had a bunch of people who liked me, a bunch of people who hated me. And so I just sort of being an influencer before there were influencers, just getting exposure to that sort of stuff, like online hate, was just something that I grew accustomed to over the years. And so when it came to Designjoy, nothing really bothers me about what someone says to me online.
Yeah.
Obviously, or I would change my ways.
I don't see you like, insulting people or calling a lot of people out. I don't see you like directly criticizing people. You're not insulting. You're not provocative, like in a sensational way. I think the way you say contrarian is probably, it's very spot on. It's like, it challenges convention. It makes people frustrated that like, it's that feeling that you get when somebody does something awesome and like, you're excited for them, but like there's a part of you that's just like, oh, I wish I would have thought of that. Like, oh, I wish that would have been my idea. It's like there's just like when you read through your comment section, like a lot of people are they're very dismissive of this notion. And they're dismissive of the notion that a single person can handle a volume of 20 clients and produce quality and get paid at like I hear people say things like, oh, he's fudging his Stripe numbers. Like those are like, he just photoshops those. Or
I think that's probably the biggest one. I think, to be quite honest, for a lack of better words, and excuse my language, I think most people think I'm just full of shit. So
That
if someone's full of crap and they continue to spew it out there, people get it within them. They have to be the one that falls on the sword and calls them out and that sort of thing. It's like, and I get that, right? Like what I've done to what I've done is pretty extraordinary and
fair,
an outlier of sorts within the realm of design and what was previously possible as a designer. Especially the fact that I'm not even like I guess you could call it like I'm a good designer, but I'm not the best, nowhere even close to being the best. And so someone that sees like my portfolio and they're like, yeah, it's good, but like, is it like 7 figures a year good?
Well,
No.
who's making seven figures? Who's making 7 figures that doesn't have some type of equity stake or doesn't have some kind of option or doesn't have some kind of huge win bonus or signing?
Well, but that's where I think that's where the BS sort of claim comes in. And there's this whole like fake Stripe screenshot movement on Twitter where everyone's sort of like fake it till they make it. They'll say they're making $10,000 a month until they make $10,000 a month, and then the thing is, like, here's the thing: the money, like talking about money, does get eyeballs, right? Like, I don't do it by accident, right? Like, I know what interests people. I know what's at the heart of a lot of people's careers and what their goals are in life. And like I said in the earlier part of this podcast, a lot of it sort of starts with increasing your income in whatever field you're in. And so that naturally does play a part in a lot of people's lives and what they pay attention to. And then when they see a designer that looks like me with a portfolio that looks like mine, and they're making 10 times more than I am, you pay attention, right? You should ask those questions. What is this guy doing different? How is he doing it? What does his back end look like? How is he selling this, and why is it so popular, right? Like that would be the normal way to do it. But then the other way is to just criticize and demean and denigrate and say it's a race to the bottom.
Which I don't really get, again, because like if you've hired designers or if you've tried to meet the scale and demand of a fast-paced agency, like I feel like quality is a hard thing to come by, and people are willing to pay for quality, whether it's from a freelancer or a small team or a one-man subscription shop. Like it's all about the value. And what's interesting about what you're doing is just from like that vertical scale term, you figured out how to take a retainer and brand it as something different and work it to your advantage, getting paid up front and eliminating the calls, doing it asynchronously. Then you've taught other people how to do it. You've opened up your process. You've explained, and not only through your course, but like you regularly will like say, this is what I do step by step. Like I've definitely bookmarked some of your threads that are like, first thing you need to do is this, and then you need to do this, and all you need to subscribe to is this. And then so you lay it all out, and now you're making it even easier. You're like, okay, well, if I'm doing all these things, now you're building an application that will help other people do it too. It's like you have like, you've taken all these tools that you're used to and you are pioneering this active thing. Tell me about active.
Yeah. So that's sort of the next like logical step in this journey. I have sort of what you could call, popularize the subscription model. The course is doing great. I have a lot of people in that. And now sort of the next logical step is to give them the actual tool to run this business the right way, right? Like I've taught how to do it the way I do it, given the tools that I use, but there is a better way. And so that's where active comes in. It's, I don't quite know what it's going to be yet. And we're such in the early steps in the process of sort of figuring it out. I don't want it to be another sort of project management tool. Within releasing news that I'm building this, there's been several that have popped up.
Right.
Some that have already been built, some that are being built. And I think everyone's sort of questioning which one's going to win, which I think is a silly question to ask. I think there's plenty of room for all of us and more. And B, I think at least I can speak for Active. It's not going to look like or feel like or operate like any other tool out there.
Okay.
Even the ones that are being built for productized services. So, given the fact that I have my very specific way of running Designjoy, Active is essentially going to be a tool that is hyper focused on making that process, that framework, even better from end to end experience, from managing the business to the client experience. And it's going to be very specific around the Designjoy way, not, the off menu way, and not all these other guys that are doing productized design services. So it will be very different. It won't look like any project management tool out there. It won't be laid out the same. It'll be very, very unique patterns that are hyper focused on client experience and agency owner experience that I think is it's gonna change the game. It's not only gonna be for productized agency owners, it's gonna be, I mean, for freelancing in general, right? Like what I do is basically glorified freelancing. So I think people like to sort of like segment it away from being like, it's productized services, but you can technically do what I do and really call it freelancing, right?
Yeah.
And so it's gonna provide a framework for freelancers, I think, worldwide on a better way of running their freelancing business and allowing them to take on more clients. And I think it's going to be massive. I have no doubt about it. Luckily for me, I have built-in distribution through my course, and so I can easily get people in it, testing it out, and I think it'll be phenomenal. I'm super excited.
But and you say it's in progress right now. Do you have any idea when you expect to launch, or when do you expect it to be
done? So I'm currently in the sort of the design phase of it, figuring out what's going to look like, what's going to be the differentiating factors, what are sort of the requirements of it. The actual dev phase, once that's finished, I expect that to be finished within about a month. The actual dev phase to get a V1 out is expected to be about another month. So give or take 2 to 3 months to get something V1 out the door. Is kind of what we're looking at currently.
That's aggressive. That's awesome, though. It seems like, you said it a minute ago, but there's room for everybody. You've kind of created this new niche that has exploded over the course of the last year or two, through your course and through other channels. I'm sure a lot of people have tried to replicate and imitate what you do. You've got some big names that are like aggressively building these productized services too. You mentioned Off Menu and Hunter's sort of whole suite of companies, but you seem to be very egalitarian about it. You're like, anybody is welcome. We should all do this. Like, is that your just take on the industry right now, that like the old way is kind of broken and this is a new and better way? Or you think everybody should?
I guess to answer your first question, yeah, I don't feel threatened. Mm-hmm. If I felt threatened, I wouldn't have released the playbook on Designjoy and invited thousands of people to sort of copy my business. It's not a matter of feeling threatened, and that's not me being cocky or overly confident. I just know that, I mean, I have 30 clients and that pays me plenty. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's hundreds or thousands of potential clients out there. So there's plenty of room for people. And so I like to support people when I can. I have, a couple of big names on Twitter that I've been talking to that are way bigger than me that are building them. And I've been sort of DMing them back and forth as they build things. I think the more people that get involved with it, the better. And I think the more people that get involved with it, the better for Designjoy, the better for the industry, the better for sort of this agency model in general. But yeah, I've seemed to have slipped my mind on what your second question was.
It was just you kind of welcome everybody and you feel like there's space for everybody. And I was asking if you feel like if the state of the industry is such that like we're kind of all marching towards this anyway.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a twofold answer. I think the agency model in general is marching heavily towards this. I think my prediction is that the agency of the future will have sort of a blended offering of subscription and a la carte sort of project-based work. I think you're seeing that with even big agencies that are out there kind of moving that direction. They're not going fully into the subscription model, but they're offering it. I think that's probably the best approach if you have a team in place that you could take on both. But, I also think from an individual level, from like an individual worker, freelancer level, I think Is it Naval or yeah? I think it's Naval.
Robin
Is that
Con?
his name on? Is that his last name? I just know him by
Yeah,
Naval.
Naval.
You have a quote or something?
I've got his book up there.
Okay, yeah, we're talking about the
Naval
same guy.
Ravikant, yeah.
Yeah, he's I mean, he's obviously a brilliant guy. I should probably know how to pronounce his name. I just see his stuff on
I
Twitter
could very well be saying that wrong. My apologies, Naval, but
I don't know. I think I saw him Naval or something at first, and someone corrected me and was like, "No, Naval." I don't know, but we all know. Yeah, we know what you're talking about. If you type in Naval in Twitter, you'll see him. But yeah, he sort of like, I remember on a Joe Rogan podcast. This was after I launched Designjoy, so I feel like I was a little bit ahead of the curve. I think the days of like working for a single corporation 9 to 5 40 hours a week, I think are going to slowly sort of dissipate to where, like what he said, you're going to wake up and have 10 different companies needing things from you, and it's sort of like this like overemployment concept when COVID hit, where people were like, now that people worked from home, they were working for like 3 different companies, but those companies didn't know. But like the Designjoy model sort of allows for that, but with like constraints that allow you to work, across many companies and actually fulfill the work, and there's boundaries in place. And so I feel like that's only going to increase. And I feel like the future of work will be, what he said. I didn't come up with this concept. I mean, I kind of did it without doing it, but where you're just going to be working for multiple companies, and that's just the way it's going to work. So I think given the agency model kind of progressing towards it, I think there's a future for it. And that's when it comes back to active. I think that's where it's at. It's like, it's not necessarily the immediate benefit of what I could glean from a tool like that today, not only for my own purposes, but for, just to put out there and get customers. I think it's a bet on the future of agencies and where agencies are going to go in the future, and look at 5 years down the line, and, it could be the Asana or the ClickUp of the future sort of thing. And it's a bet on that more than it is today, a bet on today.
Well, it's a space that's never perfect. I mean, everybody has their preferences on project management software, but even your favorite, like, you hate a lot of things about it. You're always like, it's never perfectly tailored to kind of your niche or what you do well. And it sounds like this is going to be like specifically tailored to folks that don't need big systems and are sort of intimidated by, having a ton of features and a ton of notifications and all that. It's like something that helps them manage rather than manages them,
Yeah, exactly. And it'll be another unique factor of it too, will be that it's very solopreneur centric, which is I think a unique benefit that will be a unique benefit of active. Not to say that it won't accommodate teams and that sort of thing, but it will be very solopreneur friendly, which again, I feel like is a major shift in the economy of work, and a direction that I think is inevitable, that, we're going to see a bunch of solopreneurs pop up, people realizing that they don't need big teams to scale, and make a lot of money and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, it'll have a lot of solopreneur focus on the features, which I think will be unique.
Sweet. Well, so it doesn't seem like, I mean, you at least make it sound like there's not a big barrier to entry. But I have watched a lot of folks stand up there, sometimes like direct copies of your website. I mean, like word for word direct copies of your website. A lot of the times the same style and everything. I think just a couple of weeks ago, I saw somebody like literally looked like they just duplicated it in Webflow and put their information on it. The barrier to entry like seems like it's low, but even agencies have struggled with it. What do you think people need to know if they're mulling the decision of like trying something like a subscription model? What do they need to be ready for? And what are your suggestions to them as they set out on it?
Yeah. I mean, there's not one clear answer to that. I think it's a multitude of advice that I would give. I think perhaps one of the bigger pieces, I don't know if it's the biggest, but definitely a big piece, would be to reduce scope before you expand scope. I think a lot of these agencies that are going down this road are full service design agencies. In some cases, they're just full service agencies that do everything under the sun. Very difficult to productize that. Very difficult to productize, across multiple mediums of work. And so I think the more successful ones will be those that niche down, not only in a particular industry, but in a particular skill set. You know, you're seeing companies pop up that do video editing, and not only video editing, but like video editing for YouTubers and reels and that sort of stuff.
Right.
Those will be, I think, far more successful than these big conglomerate all service agencies that are supposedly productize something, but it's really, you can't productize that. Right. I also, you know, it's one of the things that I think a lot of, in order to be successful at this, right, you have to, I talk about this metric a lot, TTV, time to value.
Okay.
That is, that is
business school kicking in again.
That is
the business degree. I mean,
I don't even know if this metric existed when I went to business school. I didn't make up the metric, but it essentially is like reducing the time that it takes for someone to pay you and receive that value. What I've done at Designjoy is I feel like I've narrowed that gap as much as I possibly can. And in the sense that, like, if you sign up today, like by tomorrow, you'll have a landing page done, right? Like that is an extreme example of lowering TTV. And I think those that focus on that will be far and above better than those that don't. And that comes down to making your services accessible, meaning that I don't have to book a call with you. I don't have to fill out this stupid contact form that leads to who knows who to who and how long it takes you to get back to me. So like making your services accessible, and again, some sort of standardization around deliverables instead of this sort of like, well, it's going to take 3 weeks, it's going to take 2 days. Right. So I have, you know, strict 40-hour turnaround times on a request. So you're going to see something within 48 hours. And so, yeah, managing expectations is probably the hardest thing with this whole product as service movement. And that's where a lot of people will fail.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of stuff that I think you have to do, but that's, you know, that's kind of,
yeah. Well, for more information, they can always get your course. I mean, they can always find you on Twitter. You're pretty nice fun to reach out.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, you can watch my course. There's videos on YouTube that I talk in depth about this sort of stuff. Like, if you didn't want to spend the money on the course, there's ways to do it. I think, again, like, the point is, don't overcomplicate it. There, you know, the biggest complaint with my course is that it's too simplified, which is kind of ironic because that was sort of the point, was to not overcomplicate this whole model. Because honestly, like, when I wake up in the morning, I see the list of design work that I have to do. I do it and I close my laptop down and move on. It's a business, but not in the sense that most people are used to. And so it's really just not, it's like 90% of it is just how you sell it. And then actually fulfilling the work is just, you know, it's just.
Do you see a lot of turnover? Or, right? I mean, like, do you see like folks that come in and out really quickly, or do you have pretty consistent business?
Like, I have consistent business, yes, in terms of new leads and that sort of stuff. They're just always there, right, and always have been there. In terms of turnover, it's a little bit hard to measure. Mm-hmm. I'm not a data guy. I don't look at data all that much anymore, especially like the finite data, like churn and that sort of stuff. It's hard to measure in my case because I do allow clients to pause. And so, you know, clients will pause. And in that case, they technically churn because I have to, it's technical, but I have to cancel their subscription. One of the points of active, right? But right now I have to cancel their subscription in Stripe, which counts towards churn. And so it's hard to measure what true churn is. It is a higher churn than like a SaaS platform, right? Given the fact that it's service-based, those services sometimes come, sometimes go, the needs for them anyways, and it's a high ticket item. So you are gonna see a higher churn than typical, you know, software, that sort of stuff. And I think that's universal. It's a lot of it's something that you can't control. It's what you'd call like natural churn, where they just don't need your services anymore. They came, they got what they wanted, now they're moving on. Perhaps they only had that budget for that 1 month or 2 months. But, you know, I have clients that have been with me for 5 or 6 years at the same time. So
I think you're right. It's this is something that people will continue to pay attention to. It's super fascinating to me. Like I feel like I told you before this, I was like, I'm going to try and keep it to an hour, but I could just go on and on and on, because it's like, I see that you have connected all these dots that, like, I lay up at night thinking about sometimes. It's like somehow you just figured out how to get all these things in the right order, present it the right way, sell it the right way. And man, you're super transparent. You're like calm and collected. You do not strike me as some kind of bullshit artist. You're not the infamous man that they make you out to be on X. I really am appreciative of your time and that transparency. Like I said, I mean, it seems like you've got it figured out. And I just really appreciate your time sharing all this information with us, because I think the more you talk about it, and I think that you're just one of those people. When you talk and you kind of tell the story, it's hard not to take your word for it. Seems like it's the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's hard after 7 years of like now feeling like you still need to defend yourself and defend the legitimacy of your business. You know, I did that early on, and because I felt like I had to, but now I'm just like,
well,
eh,
let the room phone booth behind you, or let the flamethrower behind you. Let that do the defending for you. Let the Cybertruck. Did you get the Cybertruck, by the way?
Oh, that's a whole topic. So I have ordered a Cybertruck. So I have a Porsche right now.
Let's go.
Right? And but it's not the Porsche I really want.
Okay.
And so I have the Cybertruck on order, and this may be cut. This is more just me you riffing. But cool. Now I've seen a few Cybertrucks around here, and I'm kind of having second thoughts on it, and I think I'm probably gonna go like 911.
There you go. I think that the fingerprints would drive me crazy. I also think that, like,
you're right.
It's a little bit of a what's the right way to say it? You definitely want attention for getting it. I mean, like, it sticks out like a sore thumb when you see one coming down the street. It's like it's all anybody at the restaurant talks about or the coffee shop talks about. And I don't necessarily know if it's positive attention either, so I understand.
Yeah, no, I mean, I own it. I drive a Tesla as my everyday driver. I'm a huge fan of Tesla. Like, to the day I die, will love Tesla. I literally buy almost everything that Elon Musk comes out with, whether it's the flamethrower or the $500 whiskey or whatever that's on my wall. Like, I buy everything. It doesn't really matter what it is. But the Cybertruck, the more I see it, the more I'm like, it just kind of looks dirty. It looks unfinished. And I knew that at the start. And I thought, man, my love for Elon will prevail. And I don't think it is.
I understand.
And so
I understand, man.
And so now I'm kind of looking at going a different
route. Have to deal with the 911. All right, I get you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of car, but yeah, one day.
That's sick. Well, it's good to know that. It's good to know that you're providing for the family and that you still have an opportunity to treat yourself every once in a while. You deserve it.
You got to, man. Yeah, you got
Brett,
to.
I appreciate your time, man. Thanks for stopping by the Creator Brief.
Oh yeah, my pleasure, dude. It's great talking.
I can't wait to follow Active. How does everybody find you on X?
My handle is Brett from DJ for Designjoy. So Brett from DJ.
I'll put it up on the screen right there so everybody can follow you, Brett. And I hope to see you soon, man. Come back and let us know when Active launches, and we'll talk about it more then.
Will do.
Later, bud. So, what do you think? Here's what you got to ask yourself. If Brett Williams really is the con man that his critics make him out to be, he may be one of the best of all time. What I think is way more likely is that maybe he just cracked the code and was first to market with a service that people actually want. To the outside world, sometimes that just seems unbelievable. Personally, I'm rooting for Brett and Designjoy and any freelancer who wants to try out the productized model. Heck, I know a lot of you are already. I hope to see more out of this new product, Active. I hope it makes our lives easier. And I hope you'll follow Brett to learn more about it on Twitter. And while you're at it, consider subscribing to this channel wherever you're listening. It helps me spread the reach of this podcast and produce more episodes. As always, I'm Brian Athey, and I'll see you next time.